Treble winners are back, but it's a familiar scenario. Kevin De Bruyne, unfortunately, is out injured. And we need to dissect that a little bit more. We need to discuss that a little bit more. So I've brought in this wonderful man alongside me, Amos Murphy from the City Report Pod. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm not bad. It's a bit weird having City play on a Friday. I have to say, I've been a bit lost with my weekend. I feel like today should have been Monday, yesterday was Sunday, but winning 3-0 on a Friday night, it was a perfect start to the season.
Is it a good thing on a Friday night? No, I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like the season didn't start until a Saturday usually. Like that. If it left me feeling a bit out of kilter, and I don't. It's what it's
Yeah.
literally Sunday now, and it feels midweek.
I know. It's one of them. You wake up on a Saturday, and even if you're playing on the Sunday, your weekend sort of geared around the
Yeah.
football. You're getting ready for team news, you're getting ready for going to the match or whatever it may be. On a Friday, it's like, oh, okay, that's happened. I mean, it was nice at the time. Lovely. I think it was a sunny day still, so I was out in shorts, and it was nice. But I'm not sure, and that says a lot about the weather recently, by the way. That it's one day of shorts, but yeah, I prefer the Saturday and Sundays.
That's the
Definitely.
most northern answer, there, by the way. I was out in shorts. That's a good day. If you're out in shorts, it's a good day. If not, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, have you been on the channel before? I can't remember, mate, because we've done stuff before, but I can't
No,
remember.
it's a debut.
I think it's a
Yeah,
debut. It's a debut. Is it a Kovacic debut? Fitting like a glove, mate.
Let's
Perfectly
hope.
already.
Let's hope.
Or is it going to be what's another bad debut? I can't
I
think.
don't know if
Terrible
City have had many
debut.
bad ones. Mangala had a
No, he
fantastic
was
debut,
great. Yeah,
but
it's funny, isn't it? How
a bit of
Mangala's
a
everyone's
dodgy
debut
career.
reference, regardless if it's good or bad. It just is.
It's probably the only good game he had.
I can't think of any bad debuts. In the comments, let us know. Don't forget, this is a live stream, of course. So, guys, do hit the like on the video, support the channel, and so on. And, of course, go and follow Amos as well. Put a link in the description to his Twitter. And, the City Report Pod as well. But I can't think of any bad debuts. I think of probably just underwhelming ones, like Calvin, which is an interesting discussion, which we'll come to in a bit. Anyway, what was your top line thoughts on the game? How did you feel after Friday?
It was a weird one to dissect. I said at half time, actually, we've had all the emotions in that first half because obviously 3 minutes in, Haaland scores, fantastic. 10, 15 minutes later, obviously topic for today, Kevin De Bruyne goes down injured. We get another goal before half time. The cameras are showing Haaland and Pep arguing. It was a bit shaky defensively. It was such although it was quite rudimentary in the end, it was such a sort of up and down performance. And I guess that's kind of what you want for the start of the season. City start slowly, we know that. But if you can combine the rustiness and still getting 3 points, then I don't really have many complaints. I think the injuries showed. Obviously, Ruben Diaz was lacking, and City's defence without Ruben Diaz is a lot worse than it is with Ruben Diaz. And that sounds a silly statement, but the leadership you can tell isn't quite there when Ruben Diaz is out the team. Other than that, pretty rudimentary, like I said. Nice to get 3 goals. Obviously, goal difference early on later on could be a big boost for City. So yeah, a weird performance, I'd say.
Yeah, it was weird. I think there was too much going on for my liking. You want it to be just sort of like, oh, football's not great, but we win 2-0, everyone goes home, and everyone's like, right, job done, kind of thing. And there's a bit too much narrative for a first season game, I reckon. I mean, I did like the Haaland thing at halftime actually, especially. I quite enjoyed all the pundits looking to try and find the story there. Like, what's he saying on it? I only semi-heard it, but I know Carragher and Neville were trying to pick it apart, acting as if it was some drama, and like when actually it's just. It turns out in the end, Haaland was like, "Oh yeah, it's just I'm paraphrasing, the best manager in the world doing the best manager in the world things," which I love. I kind of love that, and I did the 5 things learn video last night, and one of the things, the last one I talked about was like Pep's absolutely got the hunger star, like Pep berating Haaland for asking for a pass at Turf Moor in the first game of the season. Like, is that just peak Pep, isn't it?
It's put the doubts to bed from the start of the campaign. Obviously, a lot of the talk was, is that desire to win still going to be there? And 45 minutes into the new season, 2-0 up at half time, having lost Kevin De Bruyne, Pep Guardiola is absolutely losing his head at Erling Haaland, asking for a pass. By the way, it wasn't like it was, it wasn't the most horrendous claim in the world. So that was reassuring to see. Zidane in the 2006 World Cup. But yeah, it was great to see, and I loved how Haaland came out afterwards and said, like you say, that's what I want my manager to do. So it was certainly reassuring.
I think actually looking back as well, he was probably right. I think the point that Pep was trying to make is that, look, 2-0 at half time, wonderful. Get sloppy, rush it, 2-1 at half time, different game, And I think he's trying to probably not grow up. That's not the right word, but just probably mature a little bit, and that you can't always make the pass. I think he already wanted his hat trick, didn't he? He wanted a first half hat trick at that point. Like he just wanted that already.
Yeah.
But that's fine. And like Haaland is a great example of just what we need. In terms of that mentality, that commitment to improve, and he's ace. Let's talk about Kevin De Bruyne. It happened. He went down. Well, he didn't go down really. He sort of kind of just went, sort of contactless, injured. I think we all knew straight away that it was bad news. Where were you at, mate, with it? What's going on in your head with Kevin De Bruyne?
It was frustrating. Obviously, 1-0 up already. Everything's going swimmingly. Rather innocuous, really. Just limps to the floor. It was a little bit like a lame dog, just sort of going down. And I don't know. I said after the Champions League final when he went off injured that this season could, and I sort of put it in italics and sort of all the caveats, it could be the start of his quote-unquote downfall.
Good having you, mate. Good having you. See you later. Catch you in a bit.
I know. But everything's been up here for so long. Obviously, the peak, the mountain's so high. Coming down from it, he's still going to be incredible. But just the way that for the last 6 or 7 games of the season, he sort of carried City on the back. Erling Haaland wasn't scoring goals. He was the man. I think back to the Bernabeu, that sort of goal from nowhere that kind of wins City the Champions League, because they went from that game level, obviously blitzed Real Madrid in the home leg. So that for me was the defining moment. But I just felt like City had to wane themselves off Kevin De Bruyne a little bit. They had to make sure there were other options in the squad to have that creativity. We spoke about Phil Foden potentially going into a central midfield position. So for then in the first game of the season, for it to happen again, I don't know, the warning signs were there. Should he have started? That's for the doctors and for Pep Guardiola to, debate and admit amongst themselves. But it was disappointing. It was one of those heart-wrenching moments, I think, where you're like, oh, it's happened again. This is Kevin De Bruyne going down injured in what is consecutive sort of competitive game, Charity Shield, debate that amongst yourselves. But it was just like, just a big,
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting obviously just before we went live as well. And I think the perception I got from you is that you feel like City made the wrong call playing him, or Pep made the wrong. Someone made the wrong call. Is that? I mean, have I understood that right, or
Kind of, yeah. I'm not going to come on here and say that the doctors got it wrong or Pep Guardiola got it wrong. It'd be remiss of me to do that, and it'd be silly of me to do that. But I look back, obviously, Inter Milan was the last game of last season. He went off in the first half, I think it was. Obviously, didn't play any of the pre-season games. He travelled with the squad and he was training, so obviously it recovered. 20 minutes against Arsenal, I think it was, in the second half. Was that enough competitive football in his legs to come back? And when we saw what Burnley were doing on the pitch, the way they were targeting Rico Lewis, for example, with those heavy tackles, I don't know if it made sense for City to do it, in the sense that any other player, had Phil Foden had a similar injury, had Rodri had a similar injury, had even Erling Haaland had a similar injury, would they have been starting that match having played 20 minutes in pre-season, coming off the back of another nasty muscle injury? Because I think after Inter Milan, there was talk that he could be out till October or something like that. So I was so shocked to see him on the pre-season tour.
Why do you think he played then? In that instance, what?
I don't for a second think that Pep Guardiola or anyone like that would have been forcing him to play. It would have been they'd have had the scans. They'd have known that he was fit enough to play, or at least the muscle injury would have recovered to a point where they were happy to let him go. I don't know if perhaps maybe Kevin De Bruyne is pushing for it. We know he's a person who obviously likes to play as much football as possible. He's just been given the captain's armband, we believe, in terms of he's the face of that leadership group. He's the man wearing the armband. So I don't know whether it was a case of brand new season, I'm the captain, I want to play, even though he maybe felt like he wasn't 100% fit. Muscle injury is one of those things that it can happen anytime. So this could be, and it likely is, a lot of waffle. But for the sake of Kevin De Bruyne and his future at City, I wouldn't have minded him starting on the bench and him being used 20 minutes to go, substitution. Even if City are chasing the game, that's enough for him to impact it. But yeah, it was just a bit disappointing to see him going down with another muscle injury. Obviously, he's got a history of it, and I feel like that was potentially unavoidable. Like I said, easy to say now it's happened.
So I was thinking, was thinking, like, when was he back in training? I swear, like it was like I've just searched De Bruyne back in training, on Twitter, which is I'm sure someone would have tweeted that at some point. And it looks like it was like the July 25th, like the big aggregators went on it. So that's that's about 4 weeks ago now, is it?
Yeah.
So 3-4 weeks ago basically, and well, there's a quote, wasn't he, from Kev as well, when he's doing the whole like I heal quickly. Idiot, but he was doing the whole like he jinxed himself really. I don't believe he jinxed him, but if there was ever going to be a moment when a player jinxes himself, that was it, But he did say all that stuff, and he was talking about how he's always been a quick healer, and if to be fair, he has come back earlier sometimes I think than planned and so on, and it's been all right. But it's weird, isn't it? Because you want to say, look, we'll just keep resting him. But we know, like, he's obviously training at full intensity, so to speak. I mean, I'm sure no one's just going, just don't touch Kev in training, because it doesn't make sense, like. Cause can you imagine, like, Ruben Diaz not being full-blooded?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Rodri,
absolutely.
Like, it's just who they are as people, and like, so then you think training full intensity for 3-4 weeks, and at least 2-3 weeks he plays, and he played pretty well against Arsenal in that cameo as well. And then you think, well, he's probably trained all week as well, perfectly good, and then he goes, I feel great. And like, it's weird because then do you go, well, no, just sit on the bench for a while, or do you think, well, Kevin De Bruyne is back and he feels fit and he feels good, and then he's told me he's great, he's been training great for 3 weeks. It's weird, isn't it, man? Because what if it's just bad luck? What if it's just he might have played 4 games and then the 5th game he pulls up and that? What if it's just that muscle is just a bit knackered? That's the scary question. Are we ready for that scenario?
And it goes back to what I was saying at the start, where I feel like this was the start of his, again, quote unquote, downfall, in the sense that I would love City to have Kevin De Bruyne go to, what is he now, 32, something like that.
I thought you were going to say go to Cougat then, or something like that.
Yeah, just completely retransformate his body and get a new hamstring. But I'd love him to go to 35, 36. A David Silva-esque sort of career. Whether or not he can do that's up for debate, but I feel like it's going to need him to play significantly less minutes and City to depend on him significantly less for someone like Foden to take up that mantle, for us to get the best out of Kevin De Bruyne, because I think his contract's up in what is now the end of next season, so 2025. I assume there'll be talk of renewals, but that's the thing, he's not going to last forever. And, I think it's stuff like that. We see he is a mere mortal to some degree, where he is pulling up with muscle injuries. And I'd actually hate for the last few years of his career to be marred by almost Sergio Aguero-esque sort of stints on the sideline.
It's underwhelming, isn't it?
25, yeah. If he has to play 25 Premier League games a season, but still get 10, 15 assists in that time, then fantastic. So, yeah, I don't know whether or not he had to play. Did City have enough to get past Burnley without him, as we saw? Probably, yeah.
Do we have enough now for, the task ahead of us, essentially? Because I guess the topic of this video is how do we replace Kevin De Bruyne? I mean, ultimately, you can't replace Kevin De Bruyne. You do something different, and you hope that it's enough. And obviously, peak Kevin De Bruyne is the best attacking midfielder in the world still. Yeah, we know that's true.
Yeah.
But what do you suspect to be the solution now? Like, there's many different ways City could approach it. Transfers, using what they've got. What do you think the most likely solution is that Pep will probably turn to? Mainly for the Sevilla game, and also maybe a little bit more long term?
So the obvious answer for us, not being able to go inside Pep Guardiola's brain, would be Phil Foden, because I'd love to do that. I
don't know if I would love to do that, actually. Like, I can't decide.
True.
That's a weird Psychonauts sequel, and that's a niche reference, but I do not want to. Imagine a day in Pep's head. Oh God.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd be able to handle it, to be honest. Actually.
No, just the overload of information, and we just combust, and we all turn bald, and that's it. Go on, you were saying.
Right, okay, back to it. Phil Foden, I think he is obviously the natural replacement. Ever since his time in the EDS squads, he's operated centrally, obviously broke through as a winger. Before last season, I questioned whether or not Guardiola would deploy Phil Foden centrally, just because he not lacks it, but sometimes the composure to play that position isn't always evident with Phil Foden. He is such a live wire, and we see it when he's on the wing. I don't think there's a big club in England or Europe who haven't been on the end of a Phil Foden masterclass from out wide. He can tear defences to shreds on his day. But there was a moment in the first half, I think it led to one of the Burnley chances, where he's just trying to do a little bit too much, and that's sometimes Phil Foden's biggest flaw, where his head can get a little bit glued to the floor, and he maybe doesn't look around as much as he should for a player of his ability. So that would be obviously the natural replacement down the line. I imagine we'll probably start to see a little bit more of Bernardo Silva in central midfield. Obviously, Kovacic came on and played fantastically. His link up with Foden was superb. I think City have probably enough depth there. Julian Alvarez again. I nearly called him Sergio Alvarez. it's how ingrained that.
See his face everywhere, you know.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't know whether or not Alvarez is the answer, but he played well with Haaland, and if you can get them two on the pitch a bit more, then you've got goals in you. So I think there's definitely options. But
what do you want the option to be? Is it Foden for you?
I'd like to see that more. I really would like to see that more. And if it doesn't work, you can cross it off and go, fair enough, we tried it. Yeah. But I would hate, and I obviously in the week, there's a lot of debate about whether or not Phil Foden's progression and his potential is being stunned at City, which was just utter nonsense. But a lot of the talk was he's been billed as the next central midfielder, the Iniesta of the 2020s. You know, how do we get that out of him? And I would like to see it.
Please, I'm going to ask a question, Karen, but I need to close the window because I'm getting rained on. So, but like to me,
that's the most northern sentence.
And genuinely, I've got a skylight and it's a little bit of sprays coming in on my computer and stuff. I'll lead us to the next question, then I'll do that. It's only spitting a little bit, but things like to me, like I've always felt like the reason he hasn't played Foden central. Obviously, because he's a bit more direct, but it's also because the De Bruyne exists. You know, like you can't have two doing that. You know, like De Bruyne is direct as well, and in a different kind of way, but he is head up looking for that pass. And you know, is there an argument to suggest that now De Bruyne is not there, and you've got a Kovacic who obviously is a lot more composed, or you used to be Gundogan alongside De Bruyne. Could it be that Foden gets a license to do that and be a bit more aggressive? Because Pep turned to him in the Champions League final, which I felt was the biggest statement yet. That this is the biggest. That was the biggest game of Pep's career in a City shirt. Maybe you could argue it was the biggest game of his management career, full stop. Because of the pressure on him. And he turned to Phil Foden, and I think we underappreciate just how much that was a show of faith. Is it always been that Phil couldn't do it central, or is it more a case of we had De Bruyne who could do it, so you didn't need two? And I'm going to close the window.
No, you're absolutely spot on, Steve. And with the Champions League final. If that goes wrong, then the headlines sort of branded across the newspapers and online is Pep Guardiola overthinks again. He could have easily put Bernardo Silva in that position and Phil Foden could have played out wide. No, he put Phil Foden there. And I think if you look at the goal, it comes from obviously Kanji bursting forward. There's a moment Phil Foden drags a player out and that creates the space. So it was obviously a move that worked. It was a ballsy move, but it was one that worked. And yeah, you cannot have Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, and Erling Haaland all play in central positions. They operate in two similar positions. Do they offer as much off the ball? Perhaps not. So the fact that Kevin De Bruyne is out, perhaps maybe for 6-7 weeks, it does give City the opportunity, like I was saying before, to wane themselves off his dependability a little bit. And I would love it. I don't know if you've seen the fixtures, but October, November, and going into December, it's horrendous. I think we've got like Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs, and
I'll read them out now. I'll read them out very quickly. We've got Arsenal away on 7th of October, which is probably De Bruyne's return. Let's be honest. You'll see that fixture and be like, I'm back, baby. Then it's Brighton at home. That's weird. That's horrific now, but it is. Like they are that team. You take them seriously. United away. So Arsenal, United away, in between Brighton at home. Bournemouth, okay. But then Chelsea away, Liverpool at home, Spurs. I think Spurs are going to be more of a threat under and Big Ange.
Yeah.
Villa away. I mean, Luton away is a weird one, but obviously in between them, there'll be Champions League games as well. So it's just such a mental run of fixtures. I mean, the start is quite, at least the start is quite friendly, for us. But how do we handle that, man?
I know, and that is probably the season-defining spell for City. We usually sort of associate the season-defining runs in the second half of the season, but say City drop, it could even be a case of dropping 4 points or 6 points in those runs, a couple of defeats, and who knows who's going to be at the top of the table by that time. So to have Kevin De Bruyne back for then, I feel like is a must.
Yeah.
But again, how do you manage his minutes? Because he could come on against Arsenal in that first game of the tricky run, do another hamstring or do a calf strain or anything. So City certainly have to, in the next sort of 2 months before that run, obviously the fixtures will still be difficult, starting with Sevilla and then Newcastle on Saturday. That's going to be a horrid game, but just making sure there is options, making sure they know what to do in Kevin De Bruyne's absence, because I'm not too sure in the past we have always known what to do.
No, I think you're right. I think there's been naturally you rely on Kevin De Bruyne if Kevin De Bruyne exists, because it's like why wouldn't you lean on one of the greatest of all time, and he is that level, and it's the way that it's not even crazy to say this, the way that Barca lent on Messi for years. I don't think, obviously he's better than De Bruyne, but it's not as insane comparison, because De Bruyne is also a special player. You do lean on special players, and look, like I think anyone would miss him. And I do weirdly. Maybe I'm being optimistic here, but I do feel like this is Foden's time. I just, the stars align a little bit, and everything seems to point towards it. He looks great in this kit, which matters. I don't know why it matters, but it does. It just matters. He's obviously reached a point in his career where he's played so many positions now. Pep started to hint at being central. He played there in the Champions League final. He wasn't the Gundogan replacement. He wasn't the David Silva replacement. And we know what he is now with Phil Foden. He's 23 years old, and he hasn't turned into that David Silva, Paul's a slow player. He's actually closest to Kevin De Bruyne than any of them, but he obviously a different take on that attacking role, but he's a special attacker. That's what he is, and he's not a controller. And De Bruyne is a special attacker, but he's a passer, he's a dribbler, the different kind of things. But I do think now you think, De Bruyne is out, and we've just seen a repeat of the Champions League final, and is it ready for him? I feel like it's ready for him, and I feel like even Pep will sort of sense that. And I think he looks, I know it's weird, but he's obviously older, but he looks it as well. You look at him now, he actually looks like, he's only young in football terms, but he looks more like a man now as well, and he looks like he's grown up a little bit, and he's a dad to a couple of kids, and it's weird how the world can just sort of just push you towards something. And I do wonder if it's like, if everything's been loading for this moment for him. And maybe I'm just getting ahead of myself there, but I think football loves a narrative, and I think even the players will sense it as well. And I'm hoping that, man. And I'm hoping like this young, City fan, heart of the team, lad from Stockport, he's the De Bruyne replacement for me. He wasn't the Silva or the Gundogan one. I think he's the De Bruyne replacement. But obviously, it could be someone else, mate. Do you think it could be someone else? Do you think what's going to happen in the transfer window before the end of how long have we got left now? What's the date? It's we've got 17 days.
September 1st is the deadline day. Yeah,
got 2.5 weeks basically.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the two names being linked, obviously Lucas Paqueta and Jeremy Doku. Starting with the latter, it would be such an interesting sign in Jeremy Doku, because he is sort of like a maverick forward. The kind City haven't really had under Guardiola, perhaps ever. Raheem Sterling obviously was very pacey, was very direct, but he didn't necessarily have the skills to combat that. He was more of a penalty box winger. Leroy Sané is probably the most comparable, but with Jeremy Doku, everything looks like it's being done at 100 miles an hour, which I don't know how compatible that would be with Guardiola. We'll have to wait and see. That it reports that personal terms have been agreed. But obviously Lucas Paqueta, now anybody who watched West Ham yesterday against Bournemouth, he was the standout player on the pitch, and granted,
I didn't see it. Was he good?
Yeah, he was really good. He was really good, and I think perhaps maybe when the news dropped, obviously he had a good enough season under West Ham. They won a European trophy, and he played a big part of that. But I don't think there was, and I think even you were maybe the same, Stephen. It wasn't the sort of the eyes weren't lighting up with the rumours, really, were they? It wasn't the transfer that. Yeah, and I think a lot of people who were like that watch him against Bournemouth, because he was absolutely fantastic. Just a little intricate link-up play in front of the box. He had a couple of efforts, and I think he could be that goal-scoring midfielder. What does that mean for Foden? I don't know. Is it bad news for his chances in the middle? But he's certainly an interesting player.
Yeah, I mean, the Paqueta thing, there's so many transfers like we get linked to him, and I don't immediately always get it, but I think they make more sense over time. It's not sour grapes, but I didn't even get Declan Rice initially. But the more I thought about it, it's like, I can see I see how we're going to use him actually. Yeah. And obviously, I never felt we needed him, but I can understand why we'd get him and what he'd do and so on. And like Paqueta, obviously, the more I've been looking at him and doing, as we all have, we've been paying attention to him. It was that someone I sort of watched a few compilations, and a few West Ham fans had texted me as well, saying like, "Leave our star boy alone" or whatever. And like you could tell usually they were excited for him. They'd grown under a lot, and there was a clip going around on Twitter, a compilation of his performance against us, And actually, I was like, oh wow, he's that's good. It's David Silva-esque at times actually, and there's a couple of moments technically where he did a few turns that not everyone can do. He could do things that is very Brazilian, like the way he pivoted away from a couple of people, and when he was being closed down, it was just like most footballers can't do that. It's a high level technical thing, and that got me kind of going a little bit. And it was the way he was picking the ball up down near the right back and playing one pass, and then gliding forward and receiving the ball from someone else and spreading it that way, then going towards that player and receiving it again, then spreading it to that guy, then going towards that player and getting it again. It's like, that reminds me of David Silva. I'm not saying it is David Silva, but he's obviously not the level, but it was the way he was moving towards the ball to get it and then give it to someone else and keep moving it around. It's like, oh, he's a really intelligent footballer. And there's a lot of footballers that do go up a level around better players, elite talents are better around elite talents. And I'm not saying Paqueta is elite talent, but he could be waiting for that move, that manager. And there is no better finishing school in world football than Pep Guardiola. Like, he is that. And I mean, where do you stand on fees? Are you bothered? Or is it important? Like, that's not a weighty question, because I think there's two correct answers. I think both answers are correct,
Yeah. It's weird. It's so weird because, I mean, the bottom line is it's not our money. So I think a lot of the time we get hung up on it, and it's almost like we're getting a direct debit for it, and that just isn't the case. I feel like the horse has bolted, though. I really do. I think this season has been, this transfer window, has been absolutely. It's just been madness. On Friday with the Harry Kane stuff, the Moises Caicedo, Liverpool bidding £110 million. Liverpool, by the way, and Jurgen Klopp coming out in his press conference. I know exactly. Jurgen Klopp comes out in his press conference admitting that they've agreed a deal, only for Caicedo to go and reject him. So it's like all of the all of the capital he had has just disappeared overnight. But it's we're past the point of no return, and Lucas Paqueta arrived at West Ham for, I think it was £37 million, including add-ons. It went up to about 50-ish or something like that. Obviously, not most of them wouldn't have been accomplished because he's only been there a year. To then go the next season for £100 million on the surface, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But I guess that's where we're at.
Joe Butterfield did a tweet which made me think, oh yeah, that's right. He said, I don't really buy that West Ham had £200 million players in midfield last season. I mean, he's sort of right. Yeah. They finished 14th, and struggled, and they haven't got it's just true, isn't it? Like they probably don't. Yeah. But maybe they do. Maybe it is down to the manager. Maybe, with all due respect to David Moyes, he's probably not Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola in terms of like coaching technical players. And look, I also sort of smiled before we were talking about Doku, because it's funny because Jerry Doku, because we always do that thing as fan bases where we go like, oh, I want pace out wide, and we need pace and we need wingers, and then we get linked to one and go, but is he going to really suit us? He's like as soon as we get what we want, like we were offered it, we're like, oh no, but how's he going to fit in now? Like, and I thought the same, but it's one of those things where actually, maybe it makes perfect sense. Maybe I think we all presume Pep's got a type, but I don't think he does to an extent. But I think as long as there's a certain level of technical ability, Pep doesn't really care how you play as long as you can offer something. And I actually think like maybe, you go back to the Mahrez transfer. At the time, Mahrez was an exception. We had Sane and Sterling, and then Mahrez and Grealish became the types. What if he's just pivoting back now? Because he understands now with the Zerbi-inspired low block everywhere, when everyone's so much more patient with how they build. And I think he's got to change the league, and I saw a few tweets from him yesterday. Maybe he understands it's going to be harder and harder. And actually, we do need that maverick, because anyone who can buy you half a yard is going to be very hard to stop, and that it's going to be really important. And I think maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe that's what they're thinking. It's just like Jeremy Doku can come in and just be something a little bit different. By the way, I saw a post on Blue Moon Forum from a Doku fan, basically, like a Belgian fan. He jumped on saying, I think people's perception of him is a little bit harsh. Like, he's technically excellent, like he keeps the ball. Yeah. He can bump people, but he's a really special footballer in terms of his dribbling. He's brilliant. And he's not this guy who, like a Darmatrori or St. Maximin, who will just run at people and give the ball away constantly. He's much more technical than that and can keep it in tight spaces and so on. So I hope that's true. I hope it's not just Jeremy Doku signing up to Blue Moon Forum to, pick himself up for whatever reason. But we'll see, man. So finally, basically, I'm going to have to wrap up relatively soon because I've got to shoot out. But, like, What do you expect Paqueta to be done? Do you think it'll happen?
The way City have been moving, you assume the interest is genuine. The only reservation I have is going back to it is about the fees, because I think more than any other club, City are a little bit hesitant. We saw it with Declan Rice. What was it, 105 million in the end? They didn't want to go above 90, so they do have somewhat of a, I wouldn't say self-respect, but it feels like it at times. These clubs just banding silly money about. But I guess finally on the fees, for every £100 million player, there's a Julian Alvarez in there. There's a Mateo Kovacic. And I feel like that's sort of how I rationalise it a little bit. Is he worth £100 million? Yeah, Akanji.
I'll take it for a free. Worth... like, look at these players.
Yeah.
I got chatting to him about that recently. It was like, we don't sign bargains. Actually, we do when you think about it. We do actually do the bargain market really well. Yeah,
and I mean, hot take, but Rodri at £60 million is probably bargain of the century when you look at some of the other holding midfielders going. I wouldn't, if City didn't sign Paqueta, I wouldn't be overly disappointed, because I think we have enough there to still be okay. But if he did join, like you say, I think he'd be a great addition. He'd be a perfect fit already, and that's what City are looking for in this market. They've sort of shied away from the projects, if you like, bar Doku, who would be an exception, but I feel like he would slide straight in and he'd improve the team.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think like we talk about the bargain market an awful lot, but I think what I've come to realise in general is that what City do is they do high value transfers really well, better. And I think they find that sweet spot over the years between 50 to 70 million, whatever, where they look at players usually who've been around a few clubs, who've been around a little bit, played European competition, played at a high level. And I would argue the draw of a Paqueta is like, he plays for Brazil. There's no bigger pressure cooker environment in football internationally. And then he's played for Flamengo, he's played for Lyon, he's played for Milan, he's played for West Ham, and he's been a success to varying degrees, but a success pretty much at all those clubs. And that speaks to volumes of his ability and his character. That the football's different in every instance there. If you can go play for that many different clubs, and including internationally, and be a success and keep getting better, then usually it says that you have an awful lot of quality. Apparently, Tolmy's just tweeted, by the way. Someone just said in the chat, our resident in the know, who I actually know, and he's a genuine bloke. Said West Ham have held talks to Paqueta and told him to keep his head in the game. They expected deals to be agreed with City, and the player is now confident both parties are working quickly to find a compromise package. Yeah, it's going to get done, man. Do you know when you sense like that?
I feel like it.
It feels like the Guardiola one, when everyone's like, it'll get done. It'll get done, but everyone's just going to sort of play it a little bit. And I think West Ham probably actually know that City won't go to 100 million. I don't think they will do. I think they'll probably compromise on 85.
They did that with Declan Rice, didn't they? So that straight away is the hammer thrown down.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I think they'll probably realise that Declan Rice is high value. West Ham are not stupid, he is, and they'll probably go, "We got 85 million for Paqueta." Like, all right, I think they'll take it, and I think there'll be add-ons and so on. I think it'll go. Amos, mate, I've got to go because for the most boring reasons, just family-related stuff. But it's a pleasure chatting to you, man, and thank you for coming on the channel for the first time.
Absolutely, anytime. Really enjoyed it. Lovely Sunday morning chat.
Thank you very much, man. It's very polite of you. Guys, go check out, obviously, Amos. If you don't already follow him on Twitter, there's a link in the description below, and it's, of course, on the City Report podcast. And let me know down in the comments, how do we replace Kevin De Bruyne? We probably can't, but what's the best option? Is it Paqueta? Is it Kovacic? Is it, I don't know, does Phil Foden step up? Let me know. Watch 5 things learned from yesterday. City won the treble in a bit, and have a wonderful Sunday. And up Wolves tomorrow night. Bye-bye.